Ever been stressed out about a project at school or work, but then you finished it on time and it was awesome? Yeah! Remember that feeling, that rush? That's all about drugs running around in your veins, and God's the one who put them there. Let's talk about it! Barry Smith here, 25-year veteran pastor, published author, and a guy who has a brother named Dale who's 10 years older than me. And as a kid, he used to tickle me to the point I couldn't take it anymore. In desperation, I'd say, stop, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. To which he'd start singing, I can't breathe if breathing is without you. You remember that song? Yeah! I sang it to my kids too while I tickled them. They didn't appreciate it. Aww. Laughter is actually a convulsing of muscles, which causes pain. But the chemical of endorphins is immediately pushed to mask that pain, so it feels good, kind of like a runner's high. Or so I hear. I ran for quite a while. I had no high, not even close. I've been high on pot, a lot. But running, no, not high there. No high at all, not even a little. Anyway, at some point the pain resurfaces, usually when your brother tickles you, to the point that you can't breathe. Humor happens even in scary situations to mask pain. March 30th, 1981, President Ronald Reagan is shot by John Hinckley Jr. He's taken to the George Washington Hospital operating room where he said, I hope you're all Republicans. And the surgeon, a self-described liberal Democrat, said, well, we're all Republican today, Mr. President. And they had a good laugh. It's laughter that produces endorphins, and it feels good. We see endorphins in the Bible with a guy by the name of Samson. He had just been done dirty by the enemy. His wife was given to another man. It's a long story, but 3,000 of his Israelite buddies show up to hand him over to the Philistines because they're ticked off about what's going on. Samson agrees to be tied up with the new ropes. The Spirit of God comes on Samson and he snaps the ropes. He grabbed a fresh donkey's jawbone and killed 1,000 Philistines with it. Can you imagine the cramps in his hand after that? But he had an endorphin rush, a runner's high. There's another God-given chemical called dopamine, and it feels good too. It gives us the incentive to keep going, to accomplish. That chemical is all about progress. For those who follow a budget, it's when you can clearly see your goal ahead of you getting closer. It's a shot of dopamine, and it keeps you less likely overspending and more likely to keep saving. It helps students to get through college, to work tirelessly to graduate, maybe even with honors. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had a lofty goal. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and little white girls as sisters and brothers. We can see and imagine that goal. And the clearer the goal, the more likely we are to commit to it. It's exciting thanks to dopamine, but it's also highly addictive. Like cocaine, nicotine, alcohol, and gambling, they all release dopamine, and that feeling can be intoxicating. Think of shopping till we drop. For some, it feels so good. All for another hit of dopamine. Let's buy something. Social media is the new addiction. Texting, email, and the number of likes on a post. We crave the buzz or the ding on our cell phones because it feels good. It's why so many people carry their phones all the time, refreshing. Give me some dopamine, another hit. It can definitely be an addiction. But God gave us these chemicals to help us deal with stress, to mask pain, and allow us to keep going, to accomplish our goals under stressful situations. All these chemicals and all this stress boils down to this. Do we respond to God-given chemicals in the flesh or the spirit? Saul was king over Israel, so God sent a prophet to Saul by the name of Samuel to go kill all the Amalekites. They did terrible things. Kill every one of them, every animal, everything, destroy it all. So Saul obeys kinda in 1 Samuel 15. Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and the lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely. But everything that was despised and weak, they totally destroyed. So God tells the prophet Samuel that he's sorry that he even made Saul king. Samuel goes to tell Saul what God said, but Saul went to Carmel to set up a monument in his own honor. That's puffed up pride from the wind. Samuel finally finds Saul, and Saul says, I've carried out the Lord's instructions, which is arrogance and clouded thinking at best. Samuel's like, what's all this sheep and cattle I hear? Do you hear him? What's up with that, Saul? Oh, those. The soldiers brought them back. So Saul didn't take responsibility. Saul says, we only kept the best sheep and cattle for the Lord. Now he's justifying his disobedience. The prophet Samuel says, that's enough, Saul. Well, you blew it. Why didn't you obey and wipe them out completely? Well, I did obey the Lord. I accomplished the mission God sent me on. But the soldiers took the sheep and the cattle. Again, no responsibility and more justification. I'm not guilty, not me. The prophet's like, dude, God wants obedience, not sacrifice. You've rejected the word of the Lord, and God has rejected you as king. And Saul says, but really what it was, I was afraid of the men, so I gave in to them. Seriously, Saul? What king is afraid of their own men? It's just more excuses. And now Saul has lost his kingdom. But just think back when he was winning and fighting, and he's winning big. Imagine the dopamine coursing through his veins as all this was happening. We're getting closer to the goal, he's thinking. This is exciting, it feels awesome, but the feelings are deceptive. How did Saul respond? Well, whether he was pressured by his men or he got caught up in the victory, he responded in the flesh. And he gave in to the things caused by the chemicals, and he spared the best of the animals and even King Agag himself. So whether it's a battle, a relationship, or a project at school or work, when the battle is happening, there's stress. And you'll find yourself needing to know the answer to these three questions before the battle. Number one, how do I respond to success? How do I respond to failure? And number three, most importantly, who am I trying to please? That will help shape your response to the feelings you have because of the chemicals coursing through your veins in the battle, in the situation. Saul was Israel's first king against God's wishes. And even though Saul was a head taller than everyone else and really good looking, they say, he was probably very insecure. There'd never been a king in Israel. He was the first. And Saul was from the smallest tribe of Benjamin, so he's kind of insecure. He's paving his own way, and he wants to do a good job, even though he's basically a nobody. But he responded to his success by giving into the flesh and building a monument in his honor. He kept the king alive and a bunch of the animals. He disobeyed for whatever reason. And he gave in to the shot of dopamine. How do you respond to success? You close a big deal. You make a big commission. You land that promotion. Do you celebrate you? I'm awesome. I won. I nailed it. Do you take an elaborate vacation? Is the response from your flesh? Or do you acknowledge God, who gave you the ability and favor to close that deal, to make that commission? Don't let God-given chemicals and your own free will deceive you. What about failure? When Saul got busted for disobeying God, he said the soldiers made me do it. He didn't take responsibility. He tried to pass the buck. How about you? How do you respond to failure? Maybe it's the flesh, like Saul, blaming others. It couldn't be me, not me. We justify our disobedience, saying the devil made me do it. That's a cop-out. Or some will crawl in a hole and never try again. Or we get angry, and some of us even get really depressed. Regardless, we often let failure affect our self-esteem and our quality of life. And the big question is, who am I trying to please? Saul was blessed by God, and God gave him the victory big time, but it went to his head, and he took matters into his own hand. And Saul got so excited and pumped up with the dopamine about his success, and he didn't want it to end with his soldiers being ticked off for him for not keeping the best animals. More dopamine, please. That puts us in a people-pleasing mindset and a continual state of ebbs and flows, depending on who we're trying to please at the moment. We sometimes seek dopamine instead of seeking God. People can distract us and cause us to act from a position of fear. That's not how God meant it to be. When we don't settle this issue of who we're trying to please, we get tossed back and forth by success and failure, thinking that we're all that when we win and thinking that we're the lowest scumbag when we lose. And we get lost in the stressful addiction of the chemicals in our body. We only have an audience of one. Otherwise, we're controlled by the feelings that come from the peaks and valleys of these chemicals, thinking that it's all about us. Instead, we're to direct all of our circumstances, good and bad, back to God. Which brings us to your message in a tweet. If you don't get anything else, get this. A trust in God's sovereignty helps overcome our stress. That He's in control of everything. Listen, if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you crave is a drink, it's very close that you may be an alcoholic. If you wake up and the first thing that you crave is a look at your text or your email or how many likes you got last night, you may be a dopamine addict. And all that comes from who you're trying to please. If you get this or you're willing to give it a shot and change, just put "I will please God" below. Just put that in the comments below right now. I will please God. Do we respond to success, failure, and stress with the flesh or with the Spirit? Jesus died for you to help you overcome the temptation to respond in the flesh. Have you made him your boss, the one that you're really trying to please? If not, you can do that today. And as always, like, share, comment, and subscribe to our videos. All of that helps us get the message out there. So right now, go ahead and hit that thumbs up and share this thing, because there's no doubt someone you know probably needs to hear this. We all have chemicals coursing through our veins, especially when we're stressed. Some are protective to mask pain, and like the endorphins, and others help us accomplish goals and make progress, like the dopamine. Both work together to reward us with positive feelings in the midst of stress. We just need to channel those feelings to the Spirit and not to the flesh. That allows us to deal with individual stress in a healthy and God-honoring way. Until next time, choose the Spirit, not the flesh.